you're in a very unique position. You have an owner who gets the sport, like truly understands it. Jim's in a class of about 2 owners. I mean, Jerry Jones played it, but Jim really knows the sport, and he's brutally outspoken. I mean, I brought him on my show 9 months ago. He'll talk about anything. And he goes on McAfee's show the other day. I like Pat a lot. And he said, yeah, that Wentz thing was a damn mistake. And I'm like, well, it was 27 TDs, 7 picks, 63% completion percentage, 3,600 yards. It's one of the great mistakes in league history because it was pretty good. But when you have an owner that knows the sport, will give strong opinions, is that good for you? How do you view that? Because that's rare. The knowledge and the willingness to go and say stuff that other owners won't.
It's great for me. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Mr. Irsay just because he's done the job. Like, he's done it at every level, from equipment room, folding socks, and all the way up to the GM level. So, and he's seen a lot of football and over the years. And I have great respect for when we talk about football. It's one of the great things about being here. I mean, I'll never forget before I took the job, talking to people that had been here before, well-respected people. And they said, Chris, you will not work for a better owner in terms of wanting to win and knowing the game of football and knowing how to do it the right way. And look, we both are very strong-willed. And that can lead to some very animated discussions between both of us. And that's a good thing. That's one of the things I really love about him is I don't have to sugarcoat anything. Like, when we have a game on Sunday, he knows what he's looking at. I can't go BS him and, well, he's looking at the same thing I'm looking at. So and I think the only way as an organization that you can really make progress, and this league's hard. I mean, it is really hard. And it is hard to win. But the only way you can really make progress is if you are internally focused on yourself and really having hard evaluations that need to happen and not be worried about people's feelings along the way. I mean, look, we screw things up. It happens. And, the willingness of him to be able to listen, see it, and admit, like, hey, man, we got it wrong. Let's move forward. That's a comforting thing for me as a GM. And that's a little of my nature anyways, and Lord knows I've had my share of screw ups. But knowing you have an owner that understands that happens, it's very securing for me. I enjoy it.
I called Tom Telesco after the draft to congratulate him. And I said, it can't be that bad of a draft when you can get Isaiah Spiller in the 4th round. And I watched the big back. And I'm like, I watched him at A&M a couple of years. Big back, big production in the best college football conference. And then I saw a safety. He's got a hyphenated name, Oklahoma, went in the 5th round. And he's small, but he's really active, really smooth. And I look at this draft and I'm like, that UCLA tight end, Dulcich, goes in the 3rd. And I'm like, Jesus, he's a dynamic tight end. So as I looked at this draft, I thought, next year we could have 5 first-round quarterbacks, so it will be viewed as a dynamic draft. But if you take the quarterback position out in the last 2 or 3 drafts, was this draft a notch below or just didn't have the headliners?
I think there's players in every draft, Colin. I do. Now, how many actually become real superstars in the league? I can't tell you that. I mean, I think the way we kind of looked at it, there was 6 or 7 real, we thought really had a chance to be dynamic, but it doesn't mean you won't hit somewhere else in the draft and find those dynamic players. We thought there was a lot of really good depth in this draft, really hitting about midway through the 2nd into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. We thought that was the real meat of the draft. And I think you're going to find that there's going to be some really good players come out of this draft from those rounds.
Yeah, it's an interesting off season for you guys because you had a couple of clear things you wanted to get. Obviously, wide receivers have grown in importance in this league. When Tyreek Hill went to the Dolphins and I saw 5 draft picks, my jaw dropped. I'm like, whoa, forget a housing bubble. We're in a wide receiver bubble. Like, come on, we're being crazy here. And then I take a step back driving home that day from the show and think, well, the rule changes. I mean, good God, the Bengals had a bad O-line, pretty average linebackers, and they got to a Super Bowl because they were really dynamic on the perimeter. Do you think it's possible? We've had tech bubbles, stock market bubbles, housing bubbles. Are we in perhaps a little bit of a wide receiver bubble, overvaluing how big it is?
I mean, you always want playmakers. I mean, you always want as many playmakers as you can have. And I always go back to like the fundamentals that I've always been taught in this game. And I think you can see teams around the league going back, like that's the one misnomer of Coach Reed, Andy, that like he always starts up front. Like that's his, everybody sees the offense and he throws the ball a bunch, but it always starts up front with him on the O-line, D-line. And then if you get dynamic quarterback play, from a quarterback that can get the ball in the hands of some real weapons, then you got a chance to do something really special. And I think the quarterback determines so much of that, Colin, like the success. Like I'm not saying the wideouts that change teams won't have success. It'll be interesting to see. But when you have a great quarterback and who can get the ball in their hands, that makes a big difference too. And I give, like the one thing I'll say about the Bengals, and I give their organization a lot of credit because they took a lot of crap a year ago when I didn't think it was necessary. Like they just, hey, this was the best player for us when they took, the wideout at LSU, and they were right. And they knew they had a special quarterback who was extremely smart and who could get the ball in their hands, and that's what they did.
You've had some real success drafting offensive linemen. I thought it was a real good tackle draft. I love Tyler Linderbaum. I'd said months before the draft I thought he would end up in the 20s and end up being a Pro Bowl player potentially several times in his career. It's interesting. We look at the SEC as being sort of it's an annual gold rush for talent. But this year for some reason I felt the Big Ten had a lot of good players. And I thought to myself, well, about 5 years ago, Harbaugh gets into the conference, the recruiting gets better. It felt like the Big Ten had a better than average year to me. Am I seeing things? What did you make of it?
No, look, Ohio State, Michigan, they're talented programs. I mean, Iowa's always going to have players.
Yes.
Wisconsin. Now look, I'm a homer because I'm a Wisconsin grad and I got close ties to the program and I love them. But then if you just look position by position in the league, you got Watt, who's probably one of the best rushers in the league. You got Russell Wilson, who's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. You got Jonathan Taylor, who's one of the better running backs in the league. You got Ramczyk, who's one of the better tackles in the league. I've always thought it's a misnomer when people act like there's no talent that comes out of the Big Ten. It's just that the SEC is so talented. Like there's so many good players that come out of there. You almost brush over all these other good players that are coming out of these other conferences just because they're so talented.
So let's go back to acquiring Matt Ryan, and I think he's a really good fit. So take me to the conversation, you and Jim Irsay. So, you're moving off Wentz. Are you driving to work? Are you driving home? Like was it a long process? Take me to the first conversation you had with Jim.
Well, I give Mr. Irsay a lot of credit. I'm pretty patient by nature. I don't really care what's going on outside of our walls and the panic that happens. So I'll never, after we made the trade, Mr. Irsay, Frank and I had talked and he said, look, just be patient. Something good's going to happen. Just be patient. Don't panic and just sign a player just to fill the need to make everybody happy in the moment. And when the Deshaun Watson stuff started happening, we had been tracking it and looking at the teams who he could go to and where the quarterbacks could be available. And we got a call one day from Atlanta and said, hey, look, we're in this, and would you be interested in Matt Ryan, because he's one of the places that he said he has interest in going is Indianapolis. And at that point we kind of worked through it with Atlanta, and when they didn't get Deshaun, we stayed in contact. And I'll never forget the night before I told him Thursday, I said, hey, look, this is where we're at. And he just said, Chris, get it done. And I said, good, because I feel the same way.
Now, you were blocked, weren't you, by the Texans for Deshaun? That was a story?
Oh, that was a story. There's lots of stories, Colin. Half of them are true, half of them are not.
So I guess you can block people for a request, right? You can. You have a right to block people?
I mean, people call to trade for players all the time, and I tell them no.
So how many calls a day do you get from an executive in the league that's not a Colts employee?
There's some guy. I mean, I wouldn't say every day, but I talk to. I mean, there's certain GMs around the league that I have tremendous respect for. That there's a trust level there that I do talk to, and some of the same ones that I just have great respect and can bounce things off of, and know that it won't be on, it won't be in the news the next day. And we're pretty active, even though people don't think we are. We're pretty active around the league, and our pro scouts do a tremendous job talking and making sure their contacts around the league are strong and that we know what's going on.
Yeah. Do you ever, like some of this stuff, when I was in the Chargers war room a couple years ago, I was fascinated by how Telesco ran it. And, just having his director of scouting, people next to him, working the phones. And to me, it was like, this is such a great tight wire job. When you go into draft day, they do like dress rehearsals? Like, do you say to your staff, all right, we're doing a dress rehearsal, and make it as hard as you can on me in multiple trades? Like, because the way he told me the story is like, listen, we're going to predict some wild turns on this stuff. Do you go through the same process?
Kind of, but we do it a little different than some people that we meet. So we watch, like Colin, we watch everybody, like from free agent all the way up to the best picks. We watch them all. And it's a 3-month process. And so as we're going through it, we spend a lot of time stacking it the way we see it. And then on draft day, like I always tell our guys, like, hey, are we sure in the second round here? Because as this thing peels off, if that's the last name, that's who we're taking. Like we're not doing all this work for the last year, and then all of a sudden on draft day flipping and going, I don't feel good about this guy now. No, so how we end up, I think we ended up probably more. I think we had 181 guys on the board this year, which was a lot for us. Usually we'll be in the 160 range. And I think at the end of the draft, there was 15 names left. So I thought we identified who needed to be up there that fits for us and the way we saw it. And then on draft day, like because we spend so much time stacking it, it peels off. Colin, it's usually pretty easy and simple. Like sometimes there might be one name left. This year, there happened to be 3 or 4 at 42 that were like, okay, that's when we made the trade back to 53. We said, well, we still think we can get, these guys at 53. So we let our board determine, and I think we're all pretty good. We're all pretty quick thinkers on our feet. Like I got a really great group from Ed Dodds, my assistant GM, to Kevin, our, director of player personnel, to Morocco, to our analytics guys, and they all communicate to me of what's going on, what's happening in the moment. We get a lot of, because people know we'll trade, they know we'll move down, so we get a lot of calls during the draft because they know we're willing to move. And all of our guys are really good at it.
So let's say you're in the 3rd round, you take Jelani Woods, the tight end, and you're moving down the board, and tight end was a need. You wanted another tight end, But let's say you get to pick 73. And he's not your 73rd best player, but he's darn close. Do you sit here and think, okay, I got two guys ahead of him, but I don't need a quarterback and I don't need this. And then, like, how far will you go if it's like, listen, we have him highly ranked and he's darn close at this draft spot. Do you go down 3 spots, 5, 8? Like, explain that process.
I think it depends on, like our analytics guys do. I mean, these guys are good now, Colin. They freaking nail it every year for us. And they do a good job of projecting where the range these guys are going to go. And if they fit for us from a talent standpoint where we've got them lined up, like we just line them up. Like I don't ever worry about where the media and the experts have them lined up. We line them up as we see them. And then we figure out, okay, we've got him. Let's say we got a guy in this 3rd round, and our analytics guys help. Okay, you might be able to get this guy 20 picks later, Chris. So then is it worth the risk? What are we gaining by moving up? So then when we move back, let's say we trade back in the 3rd 10 picks and we pick up an extra 5. Well, what's the cluster of players look like in 5 that we think we're going to get and we have ranked in that area? So I'll give our staff a lot of credit. So like we really liked Cross from Maryland, who we took. And we ended up moving up we're giving up a 5th and a 3rd next year to get Cross. Colin, that happened. There was a minute left on the clock with Denver. And I just kept telling them, just keep calling. Somebody will do it. And then finally there's a minute on the clock and Kevin yelled over, hey, I got Denver. They'll do the deal. And I mean, so then you got to call the league. Both teams got to call the league within a minute and get the kid on the phone to make sure he's around. That was probably one of the funnest moments of the weekend for us because we didn't expect it. We didn't think we were going to get him. We had already taken 3 really good players that we liked, and then to get Cross at the end, that was kind of the cherry on top for us.
You had it's a balancing act. You had a coach who felt like he disappointed you after Jacksonville. You had an owner that's pissed. You had a quarterback that has taken a lot of hits. You're right in the middle of it. Was there about a 10-day stretch where it sucked to be Chris Ballard?
No. I mean, look, I'm harder. And then you got a GM who's feel like I've let an owner and a head coach and a team and a city down for the way that thing ended. Like, I don't ever – look, I'm grateful to do what I do, Colin. I'll never one day take even the bad, even the hard parts of the job. I'll always be great. I mean, look, I could have to go get a real job. That would suck. I mean, I couldn't imagine going to get a real job. My whole life, I've been able to work in football, and I am just really blessed to do that. Now, did I go into a little bit of a dark place? Yes. But that dark place it was more the disappointment in myself that we didn't get it done. And then and the one thing that my wife's always, she said, Chris, you're happiest in chaos. I mean, and Lord knows I've created enough of it. And I love, like, one of the things that I really love about this job is the problem solving aspect of it. And figuring out, okay, how are we going to do this? Like, how is this going to come together? And if you've got enough really good people around you that are really smart, like, I don't ever take that for granted. Smart people figure problems, and they're good teammates. They'll figure it. We'll figure it out together. And if our process is really good, this thing will work out. And we think it did. Now we got to go prove it. Like, all the stuff. Yeah. I mean, like, all the off season and like people forget about all this once the season starts.
Right. It's funny. Years ago, I was at a radio convention, and I said, and I don't think everybody loved it, but I said, I just hire smart people. I can teach them radio. I don't worry about teaching you radio, but you got to be nimble. You got to be twitchy. You got to be able to figure stuff out quickly, because I'm doing a 3-hour show where I'm just ad-libbing. Well, football's the same. You need people that are instinctive, players, executives, coaches. I mean, you know what's funny? It's the old paralysis by analysis. sometimes on Sunday, Chris, I am sitting there watching that 1 o'clock window or 10 a.m. Sunday. The whole league is decided by a play. I don't even think fans get it. I mean, now there are games, the game at Jacksonville, where it's not working early. But if you look at your season, I mean, I was watching the team. Detroit had 6 one-possession losses. They outplayed the Rams. They outplayed the Ravens. And, it's just, I think in your space, it is not that it's lucky, but there are moments where people in your space beat themselves up. And some of this is, I always said Brady's biggest advantage is that the other 3 teams in that division for 20 years, mostly, were kind of dysfunctional to some degree. Now the division has got more functionality in it. So, like your division, Tennessee's well run every
really
year.
Well run. Yep.
Do you see them, like when you look at Tennessee? What is that rivalry like?
Well, I have great respect for John Robinson and Mike Vrabel and the job they've done. We're very similar thinkers in the way we do. And we have a great relationship. Now I want to whip their ass every time we play them, but I have great respect for how they build their team, and they've done a tremendous job. And look, it is a rivalry, but it's a rivalry out of respect. I would say the rivalry with the New England's probably a little more because of the history, the tie. I mean, like when we played them this year, and that was like we played them in New England the first time in 18, and we were, that was when Andrew had just got back, and I think we dressed that it was a Thursday night freaking game, and I think we dressed like 43 players for the game, and by the end of the first quarter we were down to 38, and they got after us pretty good. But this time it just felt a little different, and to listen to our fans before the game and against New England, that's a heated rivalry, and it should be. It should be. It's not exactly like there's not a little bad blood in that. And the thing you think about, and I think about this all the time, Colin, when you talk about the one possession games. Like, I think that's the difference between the NFL and college football. Like the NFL is won between the margins. Third down, red zone, teams that don't turn the ball over, teams that aren't penalized. Like all those little margins that you can get wins in our games make a huge difference. And much to New England's success and Coach Belichick's success, you look at him and his history, that's where they've been great. They've been great in the red zone. They play great red zone defense. Like they don't give up a lot of explosive plays. Like the little margins that you can win, they win them. And I think that's why they've been so successful over time.
No, I lived in Connecticut. I watched every snap for 10 years. And I said, I don't know if they're the most talented team, but I think they're the smartest. They make the fewest mistakes. I mean, there was this stat years ago, they didn't fumble. And I'm like, okay, it ain't stick 'em. Like they're working on it. There's a trend now, and I don't know if it was started by the Rams, but the Rams and Les Snead, their takeaway, I think is kind of, listen, if I can make a trade and get Jalen Ramsey and Matt Stafford, I'll trade that for a first-round pick every day. You did that. When you go to a draft and don't have a first-round pick, though, are you thinking, man, like John Lynch didn't have one until like pick 60, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I'd struggle to be in the draft as a GM, and I got nothing. And is it anxiety driven for you, or do you just know, hey, this is gonna be a second through a fifth, we're gonna get our players?
No, I don't ever. Well, first thing is when you talk about the Rams in that light, like they've done, like what Les and his group have done has been tremendous. Like there's a lot of talk, and deservedly so, about all the picks they've traded. But what people don't talk about enough is the comp picks. They do an unbelievable job working the comp system. They get a lot of third, fourth, fifth, sixth round picks, and then they're hitting on them. They've got a great vision with their coaching staff of how these players are going to fit, because they have to, just because of the financial restrictions they have from having so many great players. And then when you don't have a first round pick, like we didn't have one in 20 when we took Pittman, Taylor, and Blackman. There's good players at every level. It's just making sure you identify them and then being smart enough to take them. I mean, look, there's some players I've passed up on that I look back and I go, you are an idiot. Like, what were you thinking? I mean, I just, and then, then you get it right. You take a Taylor and a Pittman, you're like, okay, I got that one right. But then you
Yeah.
look back and because we postmortem we postmortem everything. And and that's how you grow and that's how you learn. When you reevaluate past drafts of who was on the board and should you have taken this guy over this guy. But like not having the first, it doesn't, whatever. I mean, I'll probably trade out anyways.
Here, I'll throw this at you. The duality of football. So the transfer portal and NIL. So you're going to get different players. There'll be entitlement. There'll be one of the things I hear about coaches, Saban says this, like, listen, if you're going to just transfer every time you got a problem, you don't have that thick skin and that kind of metal that this sport requires. Quarterbacks especially, Chris, and I've noticed this for a decade. If a kid goes to a program and they bring in another kid, he'll transfer 6 months into the program. Like, I'm not getting snaps, I'm out. That's pretty precious. Do you sense a little bit of that? Like, hey, dad's hovering over the program. I don't get a start. I worry that you're going to lose sort of that innate 80s, 90s sort of like, because the media is harder, social media is more brutal, coaches are tough, and yet you're kind of grooved into a starting job in college and not challenged much. Do you worry all about that?
Absolutely, I do. And this will, all right. So look, there's always some extenuating circumstances why guys transfer. But the one thing that bothers me is we're making it's so easy to transfer now. Like we're teaching kids it's okay to quit when it gets a little hard. When there's a little competition there, it's you know what, Dad, you know what, I'm out. I don't want to stay and compete. And that's the wrong, like like football, like what it gives us, Colin, like what this game gives kids playing it teaches all the right things. And I tell our guys here, that, when football's over, like you've got a skill set that the rest of the other people don't have. I think you've learned how to work. You've learned how to persevere. You've learned to work in a team. You've learned to solve problems. Like all these cool things you've learned, you're going to be able to apply in the real world, whatever your passion is. But now we're saying, okay, it's okay. You know what? I'm not the starter. So instead of just grinding it out, I'm going to transfer. Could you imagine if Tom Brady would have transferred from Michigan? I mean, like he had every reason to. He was a highly recruited quarterback. He had to grind. Like I would tell you, and I don't know Tom well enough to ask it, but if you ask Tom Brady what helped make him who he is today, I think grinding through what he had to grind through at Michigan was part of it. People don't want the hardness of the journey. They want the success and it to be handed. And it is the absolute wrong message that we're sending today. It's bothersome. It's really bothersome.
Yeah, psychologists will tell you that, kids will say today, I want to be happy. Well, the action comes before the feeling. So you get happy accomplishing stuff. It doesn't work the other way around. And like to me, I like fulfillment. I get it finishing a project. Like the journey is what I like, right?
It's no different, Colin, than like everybody wants to be I don't know. I didn't exactly grow up wanting to be a GM. I got lucky and fortunate. But like, okay, I'll have people ask me, well, I want to be a GM one day, but I want to do it on this time frame. But do they want to be a GM and go work in Kingsville, Texas for $12,000 a year for 7 years? Do they want to go work for the Chicago Bears and be an area scout for 11 years? Do they want to grind up? Like they see the top level, but they don't understand all the things that came in between to get there. And there's a lot of work and sacrifice. Like people want the ultimate result without the work and without the sacrifice and without the struggle and without the failure. Like that's what I worry about. I worry about that we're not teaching that anymore.
All right. Do you get a summer vacation? Where are you going to go take your family for a week? Somewhere fun?
Well, I got 5 kids. So I got one at Baylor. and she'll be home for the summer, which will be great. The other 4, 2 are playing baseball, 2 are soccer. We'll go to Wisconsin. We go to northern Wisconsin. Oh, it's great.
Yes.
Oh, it's great. We go for
It's called the
we'll
Dells.
No, we go even northern up to it's called Boulder Junction. It's up in North Wisconsin, and we just love it. We go every year for about 8 days, and it's great.
That's my wife is from Chicago, and so she's told me about Wisconsin summers for years. How beautiful it is! Absolutely, you get that perfect crisp nights, no humidity, 78, 82 degrees. God, that's good living.
Oh, it's incredible. Like, I have no desire to go back to the heat. I grew up in it. I'm okay with the cold. I'm one of the few psychos who like it.
It's great seeing you, man. Thanks so much for doing this.
All right, Colin. Thank you.